welcome back to another episode of Come Over for Dinner. I am so excited you're joining us today. Today I have a very special guest, a very exciting episode. It may be one that I am the most excited about so far. Welcome, Teri.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Her name is Teri Field. She's from Greenville, South Carolina. She's a pastor's wife. She attends Holy Trinity Church in Greenville, and she hosts all kinds of events. She's very hospitable. She does men's book discussions where she does amazing charcuterie boards.
I don't need men's book discussions.
That's true. She does the food for men's book discussions.
I do a monthly food board for the guys. It's fun.
Okay. Her friend Tracy recommended her for the podcast. And because Teri is not likely to brag on herself, I'm going to read what Tracy had to say. She says, "Hi, Bess. Teri is in South Carolina. She prepares beautiful charcuterie boards for the men's book discussions, hosts beautiful dinners and teas at their home, and they have an annual Hobbit party each year in September, close to Bilbo and Frodo's birthday." Okay, that sold me right there.
Well, and to correct, we have it on Bilbo's September 22nd every year. No matter what day of the week, we do it on, that's their birthday. Yeah.
I love that. And she finishes by saying, "I've always found her to be inspiring, and that's why I'm suggesting her." Aww. So I am so excited to interview you. She, as a pastor's wife, of course, has lots of opportunity for hospitality. Tell us a little bit more about yourself and about what you do.
Okay. Glad to be here. Thank you for inviting me on. And Tracy is way too generous with her words, I'm sure. But she is such a sweet lady, and I love her. I do live in Greenville, South Carolina. We go to Holy Trinity Church. We love this city. We've been here for going on 9 years, I think. Between our very active church life and our active family life, we have 7 children of our own, 4 of whom are out of the house now, and 3 left. And my sister, I have a twin sister who lives within walking distance, and she has 6 kids about the same age. So that is a party for any given day.
Yes.
The church and our home life. We do have I think I would call it a robust table. So yeah, we do have lots of opportunities to host things, and we do really enjoy to do that.
I have an identical twin sister as well, and she had 4 children. I had 5 children. So whenever we were together, I know exactly what you're talking about. The number one thing was, okay, what do we feed all the kids?
I know.
That requires a lot of thought and preparation.
It does. It really does.
That is so exciting that she lives right down the street from you.
Yeah, we've had just a ton of fun with it.
So tell us, what is one of your favorite menus that you would choose to serve when you have company over?
Sure. This was a hard question because there are a lot of different options, but I squared in on this one. It's let me get the exact name so I don't mess it up here. It's a Mediterranean chicken dish, Mediterranean chicken with capers, plums, and olives. It's from the Seriously Simple Holidays book by Diane Worthington. I originally found it from a friend of mine. We used to have, when our children were all little, we would have these beautiful little lunches. It was just kind of a respite from the world. So we'd have 3 or 4 of us, and whoever was hosting would make the main dish. And whoever was, the other people somebody would bring stack lunches for the kids, and someone would bring dessert. And so it was this group effort. We'd set a beautiful table. The kids would play out in the sprinklers or do whatever. And it was just this lovely kind of break from the craziness of every day for some beauty. And anyway, one of our ladies, Chandra, she brought this dish, and we all loved it so much. So what I like about it, it's basically chicken pieces, bone, skin, and you marinate it in fruits, plums, apricots. Those are your sweets. It has the savories are the leeks and garlic. You have also the kind of briny ingredients, capers, green olives, black olives. All of these go in with the chicken with oil and olive oil and some red wine vinegar and some seasonings. So you throw this in the fridge, and then you can just keep it there until you're ready to bake. So that's what I like about it most of all, is that not only is it delicious, it's an easy make ahead. So you bake it the day of, but it is otherwise mostly a make ahead, and it lends itself very easily to store-bought sides. So you can do another course of just hummus and tzatziki dips with vegetables and bread, or those little store-bought phyllo dough type appetizers. What are they called? The feta bites from Trader Joe's, or spanakopita triangles, those kinds of things. So it just makes things very easy. You're just kind of opening things and throwing them out of bag. I'm not usually too big on make aheads because I end up having to make too much room in the fridge.
Sometimes it's easier to do it the day of if you have the time,
Yeah.
for sure.
Yes.
Well,
But
I
this
love that idea.
yeah, because you can just
It
put it in
sounds
like a giant
amazing.
Ziploc bag. You can put it in the fridge and not think about it. So yeah, I do like that. And the other thing that's good about it, well, a few other things. You can expand it out and make as many batches of this for a giant crowd. You can do it for 20 people, 30 people. And then you can also make it into a 5-course sit down dinner. And it just lends itself to either one of those options.
I
Okay?
love that idea. And I love your idea of the group you mentioned. There's a lot of moms with young kids that listen to this podcast, and the idea of getting together and making a dish that the adults would love, but maybe a bunch of small children wouldn't. It's fun to have a little lunch already for them, a sack lunch where they immediately can look and see what their favorite things are and go off and sit at the picnic table. And then the moms can enjoy something a little more unique. That's a
Yeah.
fun idea.
It is a fun idea, and it just sort of came about naturally. We really did love that time. We actually all still treasure that time. We look back at that as a precious time in our lives, because we discuss so much about rearing children, and that is what these kinds of food events are really good at. They're good at bringing us together, creating an environment for fellowship to happen in a beautiful way that's not harried. And there is, there's a lot to be said for the formative value of beauty.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so true. I guess if this is a make ahead, do you have any particular time savers you use when you make this menu, or just you can prep it the day ahead?
Yeah, that's the main thing. But I do, this is a tip. I don't measure on this. It's very forgiving. And I feel like it takes a lot of time to be pulling out cups and going back and forth to recipes. So I do like to just open and dump on this one. Just open the
Mm-hmm.
olives, dump them in. I'm not measuring like exactly how many, apricots you're going to get in this thing. It's because what you're going to do in the end is put it all on a dish when you're ready to bake it, and then arrange the fruits and vegetables, including the leeks, which I think anything with leeks in it is going to taste good. So
Mm-hmm.
you're arranging all of those things around the chicken. And then right before it goes into the oven, you mix brown sugar and a red wine. And that's kind of the last thing you toss over. So it has this sweet and savory thing going for it. So it really doesn't matter how many olives you've put in there. It's only so much is going to fit on your pan anyway. So
Right.
don't worry too much about that. And I do think that saves time.
And is this a one dish meal, or do you serve other things with it? It kind of sounds like you have all of your ingredients there on in one bowl.
Yeah, I do serve it. If I do serve it with other things. So I usually serve it with couscous, which is also like 5 minutes. 5 minutes, you can knock out a couscous dish really quickly. If you don't like couscous, you can spend all kinds of times on whatever potato you want to do, roasted or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. But couscous is nice and easy. It's another one that really just takes so little time, and it goes very well with the dish. And it also has that kind of foreign feel. Like I said, it's from a holiday book. I usually bring it for our church Christmas party. I have made it very often for Epiphany. And then it also works very well for just summer kind of Greek feel out on the deck.
This is a perfect summer menu.
I do it also with a Greek salad. So spinach, tomatoes, onions, cucumber, black olives, and feta. So
Oh,
that's usually what I do. And if I want to get fancy, I'll do those extra courses with appetizers. And the dessert I do serve it with, usually if I'm doing more like a dinner party, is peach bombs. Have you heard of those?
I have heard of them, but I don't know that I don't know exactly what they are.
Well, they're not Mediterranean. They don't match the theme,
I would
but
never know.
but they are really fun and festive, especially in the summer. If I make this
Yes.
dinner, I mean, in the winter, I will serve it with a rum cake or baklava or something like that. But in the summer, I like to serve it with peach bombs, and those are a fresh, juicy peach. Don't use a white peach, a
Okay.
fresh, juicy peach, and it's wrapped in pie shell. And then you take the pie shell, and for each peach bomb, in the whole piece, seed and everything. You don't peel it. You just wrap it in a pie shell. And then you take your little knife and you just carve out a simple leaf for each peach bomb. So you have this decorative little leaf on each one, and they're so pretty. And then you just bake them. And when they come out, last few minutes, you make a sauce on the stovetop, and it's just got butter, egg yolk, powdered sugar, and almond extract. So it is absolutely delicious, kind of sweet, syrupy almond flavor, and you just drench that over the peach bomb, and that's the dessert.
That
It's
is
a delight,
incredible. And July is peach month. I mean, in the South,
right?
that is when you're finally getting those delicious peaches. I have
Yes,
to try this
yes,
immediately.
yes. You'll love
I cannot wait to try that recipe. Well, all of everything you said sounds so flavorful, just bursting with flavor, so unique, perfect for summer. I cannot wait to try all of it.
it. Oh,
This
I'm
is going to
glad.
be an incredible menu. So, everyone, you can get the recipes at comeoverfordinner.com. Not only can you find her recipes on her page under her blog post, but there is now an index. So, if you know the name of a recipe or just a category, if you want to make a chicken dish or whatever, there's an index page finally on the website where you can
I saw
find the
that.
recipes you're looking for. So,
That is a
well,
great addition.
yes, they will be there as well. So, before we move on to your other hot tips, I
Mhm.
want to hear all about this September 22nd Hobbit party. The
Sure.
inspiration, what you do, what you serve. Tell us
Yeah.
all about it.
Okay, it started years ago. My husband used to be a professor, and we would have some of the college students over on the regular, and we would have themed readings, and then we would have a big dinner based on those readings, whatever they were. It could be German meal for a Luther reading in October or whatever. I can't remember the reading that we did. Maybe it was on fairy stories, or I really can't even remember. It's been so many years. But we had some college students over, and we had a big kind of a Hobbit dinner. It happened to fall right in September. So we said, let's do it this day and this time. That was the beginning of the Hobbit parties. And this thing grew eventually. When we moved out to South Carolina, we weren't in this state. We've lived in several different states, but when we moved out to South Carolina, we started doing these Hobbit parties with just a few families or sometimes just us. And eventually we thought, well, I think that more people would be interested in this. Let's open it up to the whole church. And we had so much fun with it.
The entire church showed up.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Well, who wouldn't? I mean, it's so
Oh,
much.
so fun.
So so it ended up, one thing we always have is really long table, whatever it is. It's a long table. And sometimes we have circular tables outside of the main long tables, but long tables are always a must. People wear costumes. The men usually wear rolled up pants and vests. That's like your basic. But you have some, I mean, we've had Gandalfs show up. We've had all kinds of like dwarves and stuff, which is just very funny. But the kids always have a lot of fun with it because of course they love dressing up. But the other
Yes.
thing that I really love about it is that we're celebrating that those stories are very special to me. And that's one of the reasons why I've loved to do this party. Not only is it just good, silly fun, but it's also a celebration of those themes in Tolkien's books, which are profound. And there are themes that circle around hope and light in darkness and courage and stoutness and friendship and loyalty and all the opposites of those things,
Mm-hmm.
the vices that go with those things. And it's really a celebration of all that is good in Middle Earth. So it's a very worthy and deeply Christian thing to celebrate, even though it's not a holy day. It is a fun thing to celebrate. And we often, with the kids, will watch the movies going up to it. And it just gives us lots of fun to talk about. And, it's good. It's that pivotal transitional time in the year. It's when fall starts. It's when all good adventures start in a lot of stories. it's just a wonderful time of year in many ways. At least in South Carolina, I can say when we lived up north, there was versatile weather. In South Carolina, the weather is almost always absolutely perfect on Hobbit Day. It is just, it works out that way. Within the next 2 days, we get a little brisk, coming in, but it's always really nice weather. I think one year of all the years we've been doing, I think one year we had rain and had a little indoor thing. Last year we had it in my sister's yard, and it was just incredibly beautiful. We had lights out. And of course, at this point, it's very much a group effort. It's not like it's something that I'm just doing by myself. We had a whole team of us. We called it the party prep crew. And we had everybody over and kind of had like this assembly line where we happened to find all this scrap fabric, and we were making those pennants, to decorate how they do in the movie, that have the triangles. So we were cutting
Yes.
triangles with templates. So we had a whole bunch of cutters, and then we had some people sewing it onto the rope. And we just had a great time, food and drinks and stuff. So even the prep is also fun. So we did that kind of thing. She's actually my future daughter-in-law now, but she made this beautiful Bilbo Baggins sign, that happy birthday Bilbo Baggins sign. So stuff like that made the decorations really nice. We hang those lanterns, those round lanterns, we hang those up all in the trees, and it just looks absolutely magical. We
Yes.
also have, we usually do a flower crown station for the girls, where we have little buckets of flowers and scissors and, all the supplies to make flower crowns. And for the little boys, we have a craft of a sword making. So I get the swords. What I do for that is go to Home Depot and I buy the large painting sticks,
Mm-hmm.
the small ones and the large ones. I buy the large ones, and then the large popsicle sticks for the hilt. And then you can just
Okay.
staple gun those two. And then we have some different kinds of yarn that the boys can decorate if they want to do colors of Rohan or Gondor or the Shire or whatever. So it's
That is
fun.
so much fun.
It really is.
I love this idea. I have an Instagram account for Come Over for Dinner. If you don't follow it, I'm going to be posting some pictures on that Instagram account to announce her episode. Usually I post one, maybe two. I'm pretty sure on yours, I'm going to have to post 10 to show
It is so
you
fun.
multiple pictures of this Hobbit party, because I've seen those and some pictures of her charcuterie boards. They're incredible.
So sweet. It's something fun that we do. We've always wanted to, my sister and I have the same philosophy. And something that she always says is that we do work hard for these things. We work hard to make things as beautiful as we can, and we work hard to make things delicious. And we want to engage the senses primarily for our children, but for everyone else. But we've always wanted to have our children associate these holy days, the holidays, and even just our family life with goodness, with pleasure, and with the idea of taste and see that the Lord is good, that these are gifts, and we don't want to neglect, these really, what are these extras, these beauties that are not actually extras. They are actually essential, I think, for a perspective. Now, that is not to say that I think everyone needs to have some big elaborate table every night. I'm actually against that. I don't think that is a healthy perspective.
Right. Setting those expectations too high. But you're right, is when you're putting extra effort into special events, it is hard work, but the purpose of it is to bless your family, bless others, and to really create joy in the gathering.
Right.
And so you are experiencing the joy of the Lord with your fellow believers, friends, family, when you invite them over to your home and put on a special occasion or a special event like a Hobbit party or the men's book club or whatever else it is. There are times that we do put more effort and more, again, it is more work, usually than our typical weeknight dinner.
That's right. That's right. But even the typical weeknight dinner, you can make beautiful in different ways. There's no reason why you can't put candles on the table. I mean, it's so pretty and so twinkly and fun. And there's no reason why you should also, turn your nose up at someone's paper plate.
Mm-hmm.
Someone bought that paper plate, and you can rejoice that they are not going to have to do dishes that night.
Right.
this is one of the things I think with hospitality is that you have some people who are just like, oh, I can't do all that. You want to receive whatever a person is giving in the spirit that they're giving it. It is a gift. And so if someone has a humble table, that is a beautiful gift offering. And we shouldn't expect everybody, I guess I should say more on ourselves. We shouldn't look at somebody else's table and say, I should be doing that. That's because we all have our own gifts. We all have our own budgets. We all have our own time constraints. We all have our own husbands and their needs and children and everything else. So I think in this hospitality game, you can get that comparison bug where you look at someone else's and say, oh, I should be doing that. But you don't know what is going on in that household. So it could be a household where she works like a dog and then her husband does every last dish. And if you were to do that and you had to do all the dishes and all of this, whatever, that could be overwhelming, but you don't know.
You might want to serve on paper plates.
Exactly.
Well, and it's good to recognize that even in your own self, your hospitality may look different 3 different times on 3 different occasions, or it may look 3 different ways on 3 different occasions.
Right.
I know for myself, if I'm teaching full time during the school year, and we happen to need to have weeknight company over, it's not going to look the same as if I had a person over on the weekend when I had much more time to prepare. And that's not going to look the same as if I was preparing for Easter dinner when I thought I'm really going to make this event
Celebrate
special.
the
And
resurrection.
I'm going to prepare weeks in advance, thinking through my menu and how to set the table. And, so depending, like you said, on circumstances, very much depends on how you will serve and what your hospitality is going to look like. And that's okay.
Yeah. And some people, they practice hospitality in more secret ways. When you look at what hospitality actually means, now we're required to show hospitality in the Bible. It tells us that we're required to show hospitality. But what is hospitality? What are we required to do? Hospitality is the love of strangers. It is a giving of ourself to those who need. It is actually not limited to dinner parties. It's not limited to reciprocal hosting back and forth. It is sacrificial giving, technically, really, of a person's need. So I would say my own position is that I wouldn't tell a person you have to be hosting people in your house all the time. I wouldn't tell people that because maybe they can't. I had a time. I mean, just a few years ago, I was going through a cancer battle, and I couldn't host like I wanted to. I just couldn't. I was hobbled over. I couldn't do it, and so obviously people understand that, but there are more secret kinds of struggles that people have, and budget concerns, and I just don't want people to feel compelled to always do that, when I think the actual hospitality required of us is meeting actual needs. And back in the Bible times, it was people traveling and
opening your home to strangers who are traveling.
Yeah. And largely Christians who are traveling. And also, when you look at the hospitality verses, it's very frequently related to those who are suffering persecution and have genuine needs of persecution. So I think I put these over high priority over dinner parties and entertaining in that way, which I love and which I do.
Sure.
And sometimes those things involve dinner parties. It's not, you don't exclude dinner parties.
Exactly.
But I do want to keep in mind what is required of us. And in some ways that eases the burden for those who may not find it as easy as others to host. And it also maybe puts a heavier burden on us to find out what people's needs are. What are their actual needs that we should be meeting? So that is
how do you serve the body of Christ? Those are excellent points. Recently, a guest made a point about the difference between entertaining and serving, or maybe she said entertaining and hospitality. The difference between entertaining and hospitality, and neither one are wrong. I mean, entertaining is not wrong, but you do, like you're saying, you do need to understand the distinction that when we are being hospitable, it's not about putting on a presentation. It's about loving others. And that could look like someone bringing someone a meal. I mean, it's not even inviting them to dinner in their home. It could be you're down with cancer or you're sick or someone just had a baby and you're bringing a meal to that person. It could be inviting someone over that just came to church. They are visitors
Yeah.
to the church and you
Yeah.
just on a whim say, come over for lunch
Yeah.
and we would love to visit with you more. And there's not really a plan, just we just want to fellowship with you and get to know
Yeah.
you better. Another guest mentioned a lady who was unable to have people into her home for whatever reason, but her way of doing hospitality was remembering birthdays. And she would
Oh,
reach out to people and remember their birthday in some way. Another lady mentioned just having her neighbors over and for coffee on her front porch, just inviting her
yeah.
neighbors over. So I completely agree. And I really like that point. So, what is your best prep tip when you are preparing to host people? When you are having people into your home, how do you prepare? Do you have a shopping tip, cleaning tip? What is some of the best things that you could recommend to people when they're
Yeah.
thinking, wow, I'm about to do this big event or small event? I mean, whatever it is, it still puts a lot of pressure on people. So,
Yes.
how do you do this over and over?
I have a tip, and this is not quite what you had in mind, but this covers any cooking, shopping, inspiration, and cleaning. I think that you should find a friend to do it with.
That would
This
make it a lot more fun.
it really does. Now, I'm not saying everybody has to have a twin sister. I happen to have one, and we have so much fun with our shopping. We have 2 church feasts a month. One is our hymn sing, and we all bring meals to that. And the other is our monthly first Sunday of the month. We have, which by the way is a great time to visit Holy Trinity because we have some excellent cooks at our church. They're so fun to.
I need to put this on my calendar.
Yes, you should. You should come to our Hobbit party.
That would be so much fun. If I'm
It
ever in
would.
South Carolina in September,
Yes.
I'm coming.
In fact, it was a Hobbit party. We had it last year at my sister's house, and this year we got a venue to do it. It's a beautiful farm. It's as Shire-like as it could possibly be. It is absolutely beautiful farm. So we can have more now, we're kind of limited in our houses, in our yards, but we can open it up with a venue like that to host
That
broad.
sounds incredible. Before we move on, did I ask you about your menu? Does everyone bring food? Do you have a set menu? How does that work?
Yes, I forgot to mention that. I'm glad you brought that back up. The menu for the Hobbit meal is generally British food, Irish food, British food, Scottish food. So we do food from the movies and especially from the books. They have lists of what's on the table in the stories. Mm-hmm. So we use those as a reference point, and then we just kind of go up from there. I always make steak and Guinness pie. Sometimes I make a rabbit stew. Last time I made a rabbit stew, coney.
Yum.
Yes. And we have people do all kinds of creative things. And this is where when you have a community of people who are just there to play, it is so much fun because we had one made like a dome cake in the shape of a hobbit house, like a little hobbit hole.
We had creative.
Yes. Bilbo birthday cakes with all kinds of candles. What else have we had? Just really creative, beautiful soups and dishes. And I always like to put out like just cold chicken and radishes with their leaves still attached and big slabs of butter and honeycomb and this kind of thing. It's just very kind of farm fresh and British food. So it's just lots of fun. Usually we get some bangers and mash in there. And I think usually my sister Lori, she does lembas bread where it's like a short cake. I think she does like a shortbread, but she wraps it in fig leaves with a rope. It's so
that
cute.
That is so much fun. Yeah. So everybody pitches in on the food. Do what now?
Oh yeah, everybody has to pitch in on the food because if you don't, you can't.
Too many people.
Yes. And the other fun thing that we do, because the tradition for hobbits is to give gifts when it's not, on their birthday party, they give gifts. We usually have little gold bags with gifts for the guests. And the men's usually has like a handkerchief and a cigar, and sometimes that colored, do you know that colored, you throw it into the fire, it makes the fire different colors, which seems a very
Yes,
on theme.
it
And
does.
yeah, and the ladies usually have like honey sticks and teas, and I've done homemade soaps and stuff like that. And then the kids, of course, they are the really fun because you can do all the light up things like little tiny flashlights that you can order in bulk, little things like that. So it's important for us, at least for our Hobbit party, we have to have a head count because we're making gifts for
Hmm.
everybody. And that is a good bit of work. It's a
Yes.
labor of love, but it is a good bit of work. So we need to have a head count, and everybody does need to pitch in on the food because
Hmm.
not only it's too much for any one person to do, but it's also so fun to see what everybody comes up with. Last year we had
Yes.
somebody made this pie with like leaf cutouts in it, and just, I mean, they really are so creative and fun. And that's what makes it fun, is that everyone
Yes.
is joining in.
Oh, it would be
And
a magical time.
yeah, it's magical. The lights, the twinkles, the candles on the table. And that's the other thing too. We set tables. We set a cloth napkin between me and my sister. Well, we've collected a lot of napkins. We can usually pull that off, but we do also rent. We have rented, as the crowds have gotten bigger, we've had to rent more things, and that is easier when we rent. What we do for dishes at this point, we don't rent all the dishes. We get those. I think you can get them at Costco. They're beautiful plates that look like real plates, but they're still plastic. So we'll
Mhm.
put those, out, and then everybody has at their plate a charger. And so you set you put your plate back on your charger. So it looks like a set table. And we've had to make adjustments as as the crowds have gotten bigger.
Did you say you rented tables and chairs, or do you have access to tables and chairs?
Both. Sometimes it's a mix. Tables are not expensive to rent. They're
Mhm.
just $10 a piece to rent. The chairs
Okay.
can be more expensive. So usually we put more budget to chairs. The chairs are not that bad. But we do like I say, the long table effect. It's such a pretty way to do things. So, and we
And how
should,
the hobbits most likely did it.
yes, yeah. We can get.
Does your church host this event, or does your family host the events?
Well, it was just my family for the longest time. And then, well, not the longest time, but for a while it was just my family. And then when we opened it up to the church, and so many were interested in it, the church co-hosts it now. So it's not all the burden on one or two families.
Back to your tip about how you prepare, having a friend come along. So, of course, you have a group of people helping with the Hobbit party, which would make the preparation so much fun. But when
Yeah,
you're doing a typical dinner or maybe a large
yeah.
dinner, you have your sister jump in and y'all do it together.
Sometimes, well, yes. What we do, we usually do our shopping together, and we do small shopping trips. Try not to, do the long, big trips, but the little trips, for our feasts. But we do sometimes, if we're not hosting an event together, if she's hosting something or I'm hosting, we have both called on each other to say, "Oh, I am way in over my head." Or we'll say, let me come over and I'll chop for you. And I'll just chop all the vegetables and then you don't have to do anything. Or she'll call up and say, I've done that. I like to chop for her because I can go pretty quick. Or she'll say, I know you're having everybody over for him sing. I'm sending over 2 kids to do the sweeping and to help in the kitchen, that kind of a thing. And you just support each other in that way. She is really just a wonderful friend and a wonderful sister. And we always say about each other that we're very close because not because, I mean, we're twins, as you know, you grow up together close, but you also have to be good to one another. You have to learn how to resolve conflict. You have to try, and you have to want to have a good time together. It's important to want to have a good time. And the way I see it is these big community events, hosting is a community thing, and it's so much fun. Why can't the prep be a community type thing as well? So we will do our shopping together, or like I'll have a hard day and she will send over one of her kids with just like a picture of margaritas or something, it's just fun like that.
Another guest talked about when she had a young child or maybe a couple of young children at home, she and a friend would trade off cleaning at each other's homes.
Oh,
They
yeah.
would take a day and one would come, they would clean her house, but talking and visiting and enjoying each other's fellowship the whole time. And then they'd
Yeah.
go across the street or wherever down the road to the friend's house. They would do hers
Oh,
for a couple of hours and then have coffee together.
That is
Like,
just amazing.
it's just such a
Perfect.
great idea if that can work out, or like you're talking about, helping each other with food prep, or if you have a lot of company coming, or you're preparing to have out of town guests, or whatever it is, if you can jump in and help a friend who's probably a bit overwhelmed,
Right, right.
it makes it more fun for everybody. And she's likely
Really
to do the
does.
same thing for you in
Oh,
return later
yeah.
down the road.
Yeah, we just had a hymn sing at our house not too long ago, and my sister did just that. I'm sending two kids to you. And then with my kids, they were in the kitchen, had the music on, and everybody was just having a good time. And I said, you know what? I thought of that when you were asking about tips. I thought that is just it's a good tip, and you don't need a sister. You just need someone, as my daughter says, who's down to clown. You need someone who is down to clown. And my daughter is down to clown.
How old is your daughter?
She is 24. She lives down the street with some roommates, and she is wonderful fun. She comes over pretty frequently. I'm really glad she lives close. I can call her up and say, "Hey, the kettle is on," and she can be here before the tea is made.
Great.
It's nice to have her close. But yes, and this is funny too. I like to cook and do these things. My daughters don't love to cook. I have two daughters. I have 7 kids, two daughters, and they don't love to cook. They're good at it, and they do when they need. But I always felt like when I was cooking in the kitchen, I didn't always labor to bring them into the kitchen if they didn't want to be in. They didn't want to, because we were homeschooling. All the kids would finally get a break from whatever we were doing, and then I would go in to cook. I didn't want to be like, okay, girls,
Now
off to
work
work.
time again.
Yeah, but we have fun doing our prep for our Thanksgiving meals. The two sisters and our daughters. She has two daughters, and I have two daughters. So the 6 of us will go shopping for our big, like the holiday trip. And we always get Starbucks first, and then we go do our shopping. And, you're dealing with crowds and holiday madness. And it's just so fun to have all your people right there. And we just it's a hoot. We just have so much fun with it. We always get a big group picture. It's usually very silly, but but it's fun. And we also like to get like matching aprons, not matching, but like we'll all get some new fun apron. And we always like to do cooks drinks, so we make it fun. So the prep and the work part of it, we do try to also make fun, because it's a better way to do things, I think. And you can cultivate this, even if your daughters don't like to cook, you can cultivate that kind of camaraderie in the kitchen. And when I was a kid, we had chores to do. The house was kind of divided up between the siblings. And my sisters and I would always say, "Hey, you want to keep me company? I've got chores." And yeah, just like
Yes.
your friends. You say,
Yes.
"Yeah, sure." And the person didn't always help. Sometimes they did help. Sometimes they just they would just hang out on the couch
Just
and chat.
visit with you.
Yeah, yeah. So we're keeping that tradition up as we get older, and
Yes, I love that tip. That is a fabulous tip.
it is fun. I have some more practical tips. I think like really practical tips that maybe most people know. I don't know, but they're helpful to me. One of them is, and this doesn't work for everybody. It really depends on the size of your oven. But one time I got an extra rack for my oven, and this was like getting an extra oven, especially for holidays, because you have one more shelf to put, 2 or 3 more dishes. You can't do those big, large sheet pans because that will impede the heat circulation a little too much in my oven. But I
Okay.
thought that was a really good, helpful thing to have an
Mhm.
extra rack in there. It just felt like I could fit everything in that oven where I couldn't before.
Right.
That's
Where you're putting everything to stay warm, I guess. You're not trying to cook with that much, but just to stay warm spot.
yeah, to stay a warm spot, or even cooking. If as long as you leave enough circulation, you can get certainly more dishes in there cooking at the same temperature than you could with just the normal two.
Do
I don't know if
you
that would help anybody, but that did help me.
Yes, that is a good idea. Do you have a convection setting where the air circulates, or do you rotate things like midway from, like you move the top to the bottom to the top type thing?
I don't rotate my oven. I can't remember what kind of oven it is, but one of the selling points on this oven, it does have a convection oven setting, but it has some type of technology that they say you don't have to swap. So that's just
That's
my
nice.
oven.
It keeps
Yeah.
it of constant, steady temperature. Some of the older ovens, I know they can get hotter either on the
Yes.
bottom or top, just depending on
Right.
where your heat element is. That does make sense. Some of the newer ones, they probably try to eliminate that discrepancy.
Yeah, that is helpful. Another underutilized thing for hosting, I think, is the dollar store. So you can get wine glasses, red wine glasses, white wine glasses, little tiny glass bowls for serving condiments. You can get like glass candle holders. You can get like brassy looking candle holders. I have found on the rare occasion, I have found napkins, cloth napkins there. You can also find chargers, the big round chargers, the gold ones or the silver ones or whatever is your preference, sometimes red. And
which would be perfect for your Hobbit party.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. We do silver and gold. The light of the two trees in that. I can really go nerd out on the Hobbit. I do love those stories. So you can find a lot of these things at the dollar store. And what's nice too is that you can order ahead in bulk. And then if you get those glasses, you also have a storage place for those glasses. So that is, I think that's great because, the glasses, they break. I don't know. I just don't want to spend a whole lot of glass. I mean, I do have some nice glasses that I will serve for, smaller occasions. But if I'm having a big, huge, long table, I like that option of being able to replace very quickly. They also have sometimes some really nice white bowls, like cereal type bowls or soup bowls. So, and they're nice. They're heavy. For a while they kind of went down to like a cheaper white one, but I went and got some the other day and they were, good heavy little bowls. So those, I think that is just an underutilized resource for those of us who,
that is a great tip and one that has not been mentioned on here yet. It's a fabulous tip. Real quick, a tip on wine glasses. I have helped with New St. Andrews events, and they have a lot of people, usually well over 100. I don't know how many. It probably depends on the event, but it could be hundreds. And the way I have seen them do wine glasses, because you're right, having a box that has slots for each glass keeps them from breaking. And you also have a place you can store it. You can stack the boxes. Yes. But the way they do it is after the table has been used, after the glasses have been used, they actually take the boxes and put the wine glasses in the boxes with the stem side down, so the wine doesn't drip in the box, the extra wine. And then take it to a kitchen. Once it's washed, then it goes upside down in the box. So you can kind of keep dust and things out. And and then they store them that way. I'm going to have to go look at my local dollar store.
It's a good option. Keeps the price down too.
Mm-hmm. Especially if you're hosting a large event like the Hobbit party. Yeah. And that's something you could save. Once you have that initial expense out of the way, it's something you can use year after year after year. You only have to buy it one time. Yeah. And even if a few break, you can replace them with just maybe going and purchasing one or two or three or whatever.
And also about the Hobbit party, I think I was going to say a bit about the costumes that people wear. I didn't mention this earlier. So for the costumes for the Hobbit party, the gentlemen usually wear, I think we talked about the men, but the women is always fun because we have some people who dress up as more like an elf, like in a gown. And, we've had some beautiful showings like that. And other people have the little ties and long skirts and bright colors and aprons. You can just get like a floral dress and put an apron on or whatever. And then with the flower crowns, it really dresses it up. And so last year when we had all these beautiful ladies with their flower crowns and they were doing we do also English country dancing. And so you see these little flower crowns just sort of hopping back and forth down the row. It was just such a lovely sight.
Mention one more time what the guys wear, because you may have already, but just in case.
Yes. The guys vary. We've had most just like the typical Hobbit costume is a white shirt, some kind of vest, and some rolled up pants. It's pretty simple. And bare feet. We all wear bare feet.
I love it. So much fun. The kids are probably the most excited about the bare feet.
Yeah.
They're like, what? We actually get to go somewhere and not have to put on socks and shoes. This is the greatest event of the year.
Yeah, it's fun. But you do have also, we've had Gandalfs show up. We've had dwarfs, with like yarn kind of costume. People can get quite silly with it and quite fun. We're hoping actually this year to do something really fun with the kids. We would like to do some kind of scavenger hunt. Because we're going to be on the property and it has, a lake and it has a little wood and, to kind of like a treasure hunt and then to end in maybe finding the gifts that they find at the end. So
do you end the night with fireworks? Is there a Gandalf who sets off fireworks?
Actually do. My dear husband sets off the fireworks and that has been very fun. Yeah. So we did, it's a little scary.
Does that close your party?
Not quite. Usually, well, so what we did last year. Last year's the first time we brought in the English country dancing. It just seemed like a perfect match, and we do a dance practice once a month at our church. So that was the first time we did that, but it starts to get late for some of the kids. So we usually do the fireworks and then we move on to the country dancing. And then that's a nice, it's kind of an end if the kids, if they don't want to be a part of the dance or if they need to get home, we kind of split it up like that. So we usually end
Right.
with,
But the younger children have been able to see the fireworks.
yes.
That's a great plan.
Yeah.
Great schedule.
Yeah. We usually post a little schedule of events and we try to stay on it. I do have a funny story about that. Last year, we set all the tables and it was so hot outside that the candles were kind of, just starting to, melt a little bit out there. And we were a little concerned about that. All these cloth napkins, huge tables everywhere. And you would not believe this, but I mean, the sky, it was a bright, blue, sunny, hot, hot day. And I don't know where it came from, but the sky just opened up and just rained all over everything that we had set up.
No.
Absolutely ridiculous. And we all were just like, okay. And all the setup crew was there, which is just, a lot of our kids and their friends and some of the ladies at the church. Just a really fun crowd. And everybody was just scooping up those cloth napkins. And we just went to the nearest dryers at people's houses. My son came into my house with this giant bucket of napkins and we stuck everything in the dryers. We did what we could, race back over there and reset all the tables. And at this point, we had people drying off things and people coming back with the dried goods. And
were the tablecloths already set out too? Like, did you have soaking tablecloths?
Candles, tablecloths, flowers, absolutely everything was set up. Like, we're done. We did it ahead of schedule.
Wow.
And then the clouds just open up. But everybody was such a good sport. And we were just like, well, this is what God wants. And isn't just like life, you expect one thing and you get another thing. So everybody just had a fun time with it. And we brought everything back and we basically got everything back on the tables almost in time. So the first early guest who came in, we were like, oh, welcome to the party. Please set these napkins on, and they were just good sports about it. They were, we sat there folding napkins and resetting the tables and it worked out. And then afterwards we looked around and we just could not believe. The only difference is I noticed that some of my new napkins were kind of bleeding into the others. So some of the yellows had kind of turned bluish from, considering the rain, that was a fair trade. It was not bad considering what could have happened. And then we had beautiful and perfect weather for the rest of the night. So sometimes, isn't that just life?
That is life. And if you do it year after year after year, it's not going to be a perfect event every year. So just being able to roll with the flow and readjust and have a great attitude.
Yeah.
That's an amazing story.
I think that's true of just your normal hosting events too. I mean, things fall behind schedule and things burn and sometimes they don't cook all the way and sometimes the oven didn't get hot and sometimes your oven heats up the house so that everyone's sweating and sometimes flies get in the house and sometimes you have inhospitable guests. This is actually another entire topic. The polite thing to do is kind of overlook and cover faux pas, and that is a host's job. There are also times when you actually have to, say something or kind of set boundaries, especially I think, like I said, I've lived all over. I've seen all kinds of things. There was one particular era where someone would show up to the event like an hour early.
Oh, so wow.
Go, okay. Yeah. So, and that's crunch time. You're sweeping, you're putting,
that's when you don't really have time to sit and talk and be a hostess quite yet.
Exactly. And the kids are unattended and you're trying, it's not the time. So once or twice, you think, okay, must have been a mistake on the time. And then I started to realize this is a pattern, that happens to everybody on group events, that this person would show up quite early. So, that's a choice that someone makes. I'm going to show up early and who knows why, maybe it's interesting or maybe they want a nap on the couch or whatever. I don't know, but it's not,
They're
it's
not
not,
realizing how imposing it is.
yeah, it's not. In a case like that, and I can come up with other examples, where you have somebody who may not know how to be a guest in that way, where I've never want to be rude, but I think there are some times where you have to say, okay, we're not ready to receive guests. Come back at 5:30 and we will be ready to receive you. And you can just say that politely. You don't have to be like rude about it. There's no, or let's just say someone is rude to your kid or something, like something like this that might happen. So many things you're going to overlook. And then there are times where you're going to say, I can't overlook that. And it needs to be addressed, because that is part of hospitality too, is making sure that your home is a haven, and it's a place of refuge. You want your table to be a place of refuge from the world. So, and sometimes that means making sure that those world's habits don't come into your own household. And so you want to say something. That happened one time where somebody did something to my child that I didn't appreciate. I just brought the child right next to me, and I didn't worry, oh no, is this going to hurt feelings or anything like that? I just thought, no, this is what I need to do right now. And if anybody's feelings are hurt, if it's obvious that I'm making a move based on behavior, that's okay. That's what we need to do.
You're showing that you're showing the person that you are not supporting their rudeness and not supporting what they just said.
Right. And I don't need to call it out. There are lots of things that you can say that are still gracious in those situations. But I do think sometimes inhospitable guests, if we can use that term, inhospitable guests are sometimes an impediment to people wanting to host, where they say, oh, I just can't have all those kids in my house. They're terrors. And some kids are very, very naughty. I've heard stories of kids who wander through the attics and break toys and stuff. And this can happen.
Right.
If people don't keep an eye on their kids.
And there are parents who are oblivious, or who just kind of have a laissez-faire attitude about parenting.
Yes. And sometimes they have a laissez-faire attitude about other people's property too, where they'll say, well, I know that my kid just completely destroyed this. That's just part of hosting. That's the kind of thing you're going to have to get used to when you host. That's not something you would say to your host when you have destroyed their property. You say, I'm sorry. I am very sorry. And so this is one thing where hosting, when you host, it actually teaches you. Sometimes we don't know how to be a good host. And sometimes being a host actually teaches you how to be a better guest, because you learn, oh, wow, I'm trying to set up a thing and I need RSVPs. I need to know if I need to dismantle an entire room of my house to make sure I have enough table space or not. And so then you realize, oh, RSVPs are pretty important for sit down events. You know what I mean? Or I don't know, you could come up with 100 of these where when you host, you start to realize, wow, a lot of work went into that. Or it just teaches you how to be a
gracious guest. Well, and as a host, I think it would teach you, the more you do it, the more that you have to, the two things you mentioned, how to cover things in love, but also for a non-confrontational person, how to graciously and kindly actually do a confrontation when you need to. Some people can be so nervous or so just they don't ever want to say anything, to the point where their table isn't a haven for their own family or for their other guests. The rudeness continues. Someone's been hurt, but they kind of are frozen in fear because they don't know how to address it.
Yeah.
And so being able to address it quickly and cheerfully and not let it go on is also something that is difficult and has to be learned.
Yes.
So your tips about that, those strike close to home, because I am not good at that. But one thing I've recognized in myself is, for one, that could keep you from wanting to host, if it keeps happening over and over and over. Yeah. But for two, it could allow a person to build up resentment or bitterness or anger or whatever it is, if something keeps happening over and over and over, but you've never said anything. And so maybe they don't know, maybe they're completely oblivious.
Right.
I mean, they could just be a rude person, but sometimes people are just not raised with manners. And it's
and
more and more common in our society that that's true.
Yeah. And I do think that is more, generally the case. It's usually not the case that someone is setting out to be disrespectful or rude or in any way. It sometimes is an oversight. And sometimes the oversight is such that you can't overlook it. And sometimes it is, this does take wisdom, but it does help me to think when things are difficult, because I don't know if you actually enjoy conflict. I think there's something wrong with you. Most of us have a little bit of that, this is uncomfortable, but I think that it helps me to think in terms of this is best for my children and this is best for my family. Those things make it very easy because then you can kind of turn on your protection of your people. And that makes it easier because you feel like, well, I would fight a bear for you, Sometimes you need to say something for the benefit of someone else so that it's not just selfish, but you have to think what is good, not only for our family, but our community. Sometimes this is what's good for our community is these kind of frank communication. I think it's very helpful. And I don't mean frank is like you get that kind of New Yorker, I'm going to say what I want, kind of a thing.
Right.
I don't think that is proper, but you know what I mean, as I've described.
Yes.
I have a little poem that I wrote. It's a little ditty. It's not a big thing, but it is a perspective that we were having a deck dining night. And I remember I was making dinner and some of the kids were working and kind of just had the burdens of life on their shoulders. And others were just kind of silly at the table. And we were all kind of assembling. And as we were assembling, I was lighting the candles and it was dark outside. And I just remember thinking that it was so symbolic of what we were doing to have all of this light shining at that table with all the darkness around it. And so I wrote this little poem and my husband, Eddie, always reads it at the beginning of our Hobbit parties. Come ye hearts unto the table, broken, cheerful, anxious, stout. Come and laugh, for we are able here to drive the darkness out. And that is kind of a theme I think is so wonderful for tables, that you're coming and you're just sort of taking the burdens of the world and just pushing them out for a minute while you feast and enjoy something beautiful. And it's also on theme for our Hobbit parties too, because it is that light in darkness theme. And so that's why Eddie always reads it at our Hobbit parties. So I remember when I wrote that at our little deck meal, and then a couple years later, we were having the Hobbit party, and I was in the middle of chemo, and I could just hardly walk. We didn't have a Hobbit party that year. My dear sister, who was just so wonderful during that whole time, she grows roses, designer roses, and she would just bring over a meal, and with that meal would be buckets of flowers from her spring flush, and she just surrounded my little recovering world with her beautiful roses. And there were so many of them, and they would just slowly die. And I would watch them die. And it marked the passage of time for me so that I could watch these flowers kind of lose their life and think that as they die, I rise, that I'm recovering more and more. It was a beautiful thing that she did. And that's just a side note to
That
just
is
share.
amazing. And what friendship and love and hospitality, speaking
Oh,
of creative
yeah.
ways to show hospitality to someone,
Such a perfect
just to
hospitality
minister to you in a way that really uplifted your spirits.
Yes.
And your poem is beautiful as well. What a perfect beginning to the Hobbit party.
Thank you. It was nice. And so that one year when I was so sick, Lori knows how much the Hobbit party means to me. So we just had a family dinner that night and a Hobbit party, and just with just us out in her backyard, out on the patio, and the tables were so beautifully lit, and it was just such a small little crowd of just us. I mean, it's still with all of our kids, it was still a
it was still a party. For sure.
Thinking on that poem and just feeling like, here we have these cares, these burdens that we were carrying at the time. And it was such a comfort. The beauty was a comfort. And the love of such a close family was a comfort. And the poem meant even more to me then when I had those anxious thoughts and just could hardly sit up straight. In fact, I remember thinking I was going to tip, and I just didn't want to tell anybody how badly I was feeling because I didn't want anybody to take me home because we were having
right. You wanted to stay for the whole event, the whole party, till the end of the Hobbit party.
Yes. So I have maybe one more tip.
Okay.
It's a kind of a silly thing, but just to end. I like to take a picture at the end of the night. Take a picture of the table. I love to get the twinkly lights and all the beautiful perfection of the table and the flowers and everything before, of course. And I always post those on Instagram. And I love when other people post. I like to post the kind of things that I like to see in other people's,
Yes, it gives you inspiration.
yeah. And it's just so beautiful to see what people do and how
Yes.
creative they are. And I just love it. At the end, though, when it's drippy candle wax and spills and stains and everything that shows the humanity that was there, I like to just grab one last little shot as evidence of the fellowship, as evidence of the humanity and the shared life that we have had at that table. And it's
A
just a little,
different kind of beauty,
yeah,
a
yeah,
beauty that recognizes this was enjoyed, this was tasted, this was fun.
yes,
We didn't just take a picture of a still life, a perfect table that hasn't been used.
right, right. It's a messy table, and it's a satisfying table in a different kind of way. So I do love that, and I have a little store of my spent pictures, as I call them.
That's a great tip.
Yeah, it is. I think it's fun because then it reminds you too. It might remind you of the sacrifice, that you that tablecloth was ruined, or whatever, and that's okay. That we don't want to have such a perspective on hosting that we're just so fussy that we don't want to use our things. We have to expect a certain amount of wear and tear. I did not set a tablecloth that I don't think is going to get spilled. That's part of the fun. I mean, that's part of it. It's not fun to spill drinks. I don't think it's fun to spill drinks. I don't want to spill a drink in somebody else's house, but that is what happens.
Mm-hmm. That's life. And
Yeah.
so if you go into it expecting that, then it's not, your emotions are right where they need to be whenever it does happen because you expected it to happen.
Yeah.
Somebody's
Right.
going to spill, somebody's going to drop something, something's going to break.
Yep.
You mentioned earlier the food might be undercooked or overcooked. I mean, something is not going to be absolutely
Right.
perfect.
Right. And you have to expect that your guests might come in having some kind of heated marital or something,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
don't know, what's going on in people's lives. There's all kinds of things that can happen. One more tip though, another dollar store thing that I forgot to mention is I like when I'm having a bunch of kids, and especially if I'm doing courses with kids, because I don't want them to get bored at the table. And I do think sometimes people think courses are more fussy, but it is actually gives you more time to fellowship and you can kind of stretch that meal out and enjoy it. But I don't want the kids to get bored. And so I like to pick up like a little containers, the little tubes of like Play-Doh or, wiki sticks or, something that they can do with their hands at the table and just have a little basket and everybody can pick their favorite color or whatever. And that is something fun at the table.
Do
That
you do different types of tablecloths for kids where they're not doing Play-Doh on your regular tablecloth, or does it not matter?
I don't think it matters much. What I usually do in my house, I have a dining room, and then next to the dining room, separated by just a couple of half wall situations, is another kind of a front room. And that is mostly just my art studio stuff. I study painting and drawing, and I have all my supplies in there, but it's not a whole lot of furniture. And so anytime I can just move a little love seat out of there and just expand the table. So to make a long table. So I have to do that just when my sister comes over with her kids. So let alone if I'm having, a party. So we like that room to be a pretty flexible space. So what I do is usually just get a bunch of tablecloths of the same color and just drape them over the whole table. So I have a long table. If I buy a new tablecloth, I buy 4 of them. And so, or 3 of them, depending on, what I buy it for. And I have just a stack of white ones that I can just bleach and use. And sometimes I just love a bare table. But at this point, honestly, my table is so scuffed up that it looks better covered. So that's what I do. But one thing I do when I'm setting up meals for that long table is it's really tight and crowded to have people going in and out. And sometimes depending on the meal, if it's just a big mess of a meal, I just say everything's on the stove. Left side of the table, go get your drinks, which are set up here. This side of the table, you guys get your food. We usually do ladies first. So that's what we do if it's a real mess. But what I'd like to do whenever I can is just sort of divide each as an individual table. So put a main course on each table or start with salads on everybody's plate already made. Or if I'm doing toppings, I'll just put a grouping of toppings on each table or 2 on each table or whatever, so that everybody doesn't have to keep getting up if we don't have to. It does make things really hard because it's a tight space,
Mm-hmm.
get all those people in. So I just kind of divide it up in many table spaces. So I think, okay, I've got 3 tables. I'm going to need 3 candelabras. I'm going to need 3 flower arrangements and 3 bowls of taco meat or whatever. So
Mm-hmm. That's a great idea. And then you're not having to, like you say, get up if it's a serving on the bar
yeah.
or pass. By the time the first person passes it all the way to the 30th person, the food is completely ice cold.
And not to mention, if you have a dish that can feed 30 people, it is too heavy to pass.
That's true. Too big and bulky, and a kid can't hold it and serve at the same time.
Right. The thing Lori always says, and I think this is really good too, is that you want your table to be, you work hard to make these things so that people have a place to belong. She always says that these are within my doors. I want you to feel like you belong here. And a friend of mine was saying too that it's anticipating the needs of your guests, and that is a way to be thoughtful about what the needs are.
Do you use name tags to help them understand where to sit, or in what ways do you do that? How do you anticipate their needs?
Well, it depends on the person. It could be dietary restrictions or, just things you don't like to eat. We can go crazy with dietary restrictions that really can impede fellowship. But if somebody's going to come to my house, I don't want to serve something that they can't eat. I don't want to serve something that they don't like. So finding out what they like, of course, that it may be obvious, but it's worth stating that, that's one way to love your neighbor. It's figure out what they can and can't eat. And that chicken dish, you can push aside all those veggies and get into that chicken. So even a picky eater can just worry about the chicken. Sometimes we do name tags. We do name tags for holidays, and sometimes we just do it. I have done a white erase markers on the plates, which is fun, especially like for kids. But I ended up thinking I don't want my guests to feel like their plates have been handled too much, So I don't do that one on it. But for a casual meal, I think it's fun, and it comes right off of the plate, which is fun. So yeah, sometimes name tags. The way we usually do it in our house is we do, Eddie and I at the top, and then kind of oldest to babies, and then from the other side, oldest of the kids down, so that kind of the younger ones are in the middle, closer to the parents.
That's not a bad idea, because then they can kind of keep an eye on what they're doing, if they need help serving, if they need to put away the Play-Doh instead of, and eat their food.
Right.
What is your best advice for showing warm hospitality to those coming into your home? How do you make people feel welcome? I know we've talked a little bit about that just now, but is there anything else you'd like to add?
Just that perspective of it being a refuge, that kind of perspective, I think is really helpful with this, that your efforts are there, to create a place for the fellowship to happen. And sometimes there are genuine needs in that hosting.
What is your must-have kitchen item, and where can we find it?
I thought about this question, and I wasn't sure what to say, but I will say the one thing that is indispensable to me, there's a pun in there, is my electric kettle. Electric kettle. We are big tea drinkers here. We have tea times, tea parties, tea afternoons, and then French press in the morning. We just use that kettle all the time, and it's fast. It's so fast. And you can get some that are fancy and high end that like hold your temperature, whatever. So I do love the tea kettle. I also love my electric milk frother. Milk frother. Yes. And this is not one of those handheld sticky battery things. Those are fine. Mm-hmm. But this thing is I just absolutely love it. It is electric. It has a little spinner at the bottom, and it froths milk so beautifully. Ours does cold milk, hot milk. You can do hot chocolates in there. We do boba tea mixes in there. My younger daughter, Isabel, she makes boba tea for us, and she cooks the boba in the Instant Pot and then mixes it in our little frother. It is a great little kitchen tool. I love it.
Okay. What brand do you have on both of them? What's your favorite kettle? And tell us about
what you have. A favorite kettle. It could be just like whatever. And we burn through them, something will happen to it and we just get another one. Sorry, I can't remember I'll get something on the one that I like. my husband actually in the mornings, he makes my coffee, and it is just the favorite part of my day. He does a French press, and then he does just a little whipped cream in this frother. And the texture is absolutely beautiful. It's smooth. It is not like a chunk. It's not like it's just a glorious texture for whipping cream in this. And it's still pourable, but you still need a spoon to kind of scrape. It's smooth, and it's just a really wonderful way to start off the morning.
Okay,
So,
I'm sold. I'm going to have to find this link, find this exact product, and post it because I'm sold.
it's a great product, and we just find a lot of uses for it. Any kind of powder drink. So we use the bubble tea powders. You make the powder the base, and so she does them. My daughter does them.
Okay, I've never made those. I've never even seen those. Do you buy those in a regular grocery store or do you order them?
The boba tea supplies.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is another tip I forgot to mention. This is a worth its own tip here.
Okay.
I'm really going on a long time here.
Keep going. You have some fabulous tips.
I think we need to utilize our foreign markets more. I mean, you can get great
There are
deals
Asian stores in pretty much every town.
Asian stores, I have a Korean market that I do a Korean pork, and I get my toppings like the seaweed topping and kimchi and the sauce I get there from my Indian market. One of my dear friends is an Indian, and we were neighbors together, and we became very close friends. Her daughter and my daughter were the same age, and we were just wonderful neighbors, just adored one another. It's very hard to leave her. And we still see each other regularly. And one of the things that we do all the time is we cook together. So she likes me to cook Mexican food, enchiladas, and American desserts. Usually what we do is do a big Indian feast. And so she has taught me how to make all of her Indian food, and we just love it. So anyway, the Indian market, you can get great deals on rice and big, like whole season, big long cinnamon sticks for your fall parties and things like that. So, and then Asian markets too. We get our bubble supplies at our Asian market, not the Korean one, a different one. It's an Asian market. It's just got a huge selection, and you can get really fun things there, like the purple sweet potatoes. You can make purple, like just fun things.
Purple
like,
mashed potatoes.
Yeah. Exactly.
Or roasted purple potatoes.
Yes.
I want to do fun idea.
Yeah, for Thanksgiving next year, I think I would like to do a purple sweet potato pie. I think that would be beautiful on the table.
That would be beautiful.
Yes.
Once you convince people it's really just potatoes, they'll eat it. Like, what is this purple pie? How fun. Yes. And
Asian markets is a really good tip because you can get so much there. Things like rose syrup for your drinks and at the Middle Eastern market, or you can get like specialty cuts of goat. Goat is so good in the Instant Pot. It makes for a really nice, savory, wonderful meat that you can make biryanis out of and stuff like that. So yeah, foreign markets is a really underutilized tip for a lot
of the people working there are likely a great resource and would answer your questions or help you.
They're great about it. Yeah, they're really good about questions and
I went to one, it's been a little bit, but I asked, well, what are your favorite? I was kind of in the dessert section, like all these foreign cookies. And I bought the one that he said was his favorite because it's like, well, it's worth trying.
That's right. Yeah, you can find often good teas there. We found one of our favorite teas there. It's a cardamom tea that we found at the Middle Eastern restaurant. Just really a lot of really fun stuff.
Fabulous tip. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for having me. It was so fun. Fun to talk about these things. It's fun to find, like-minded friends. And like we were talking about finding a buddy, it's fun to find someone who cares about the things that you do.
Yes. And it's so encouraging to hear from different ladies around the country who have different styles, who have different recipes, who have different ideas on how to host and what events to put on, like the Hobbit party or the various different church events that you mentioned. I mean, it's just inspiration for trying something different in your own life.
Well, I'm inspired too. We all have these different communities and they have different sort of flavors. And if I can use that,
no pun intended.
It's fun to see the different cultures. You have a small church or a large church, and they're going to have to do things very differently. And a small family and a large family. And sometimes we're both. Now that 4 kids have moved out, I feel like we're a smaller family, but I'm still cooking for lots of more people than I need to cook for.
Yes.
So it's different people do different things in different ways. And so it's one of the reasons why I love the idea of this podcast, where you're just pulling from these different resources and giving people, especially young new hosts, giving them a place to turn for these kinds of ideas. It's just really fun.
Well, thank you. I love hosting it. Until next time.